Oh, I want to do a little. I just watched, and this is just going to be like politics. And this is the old block, so I didn't do any in here. Got a lot of snow still. You know, I just watched that news conference that Trump gave. Now, look, I know Trump is. One thing that you're seeing is he'll make mistakes when he speaks in the area of how you communicate, but he'll speak things that normally other people will not speak. You know, 2 years ago, I might link this post I wrote. I have a post on my different sites that says Russia, something else, and World War III. But I did that post a few years ago because not just as one little like incident that took place, but when you kind of read about a lot of issues in the world and you look at things, there were things that led me to think we are certainly in that one area of the world, particularly with Russia, things are on a brink. Why are they on a brink? It's a lot. But for many years, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States actually made deals with Russia. Russia was always wanted assurances that when the Soviet Union collapsed, and then they had their independent satellite states, Georgia and others that used to be part of the Soviet Union, and then the majority of the former Soviet Union is now what we call Russia, but all those other states, nation states, some became independent democracies, things of that nature. But we kind of made a promise that we would never build up military forces right on the Russian border, meaning some of those breakaway states are right on the border with Russia. So if we started putting more troops, which we just did, Obama did that right in one of his last actions, put, I think, 4,000 more on one of the border states. Now, for a period of time, Russia and their like West Point military academy, it was not a secret that their military was actually training not just for a defensive action against the U.S. And I've read some military things on this over the years, but they were preparing their military leaders for an actual aggressive war with the U.S. And some things that took place in Syria, the shooting down of the Russian plane by Turkey, which is a NATO ally, some things made me think Russia's just waiting to see. And over the last few weeks, one of the huge false news stories has been that Trump and his people, for a very long period of time, maybe the last year, were secretly colluding with Russia behind the scenes. That they were secretly, doing things. In the news conference today, I don't know if Trump ever said it before, he said, I have no investments in Russia. I have no dealings in Russia. And I believe he probably doesn't. But when you watch the news, why would he even have to say that? Because the atmosphere, the media had to pick up on a particular scandal, whether it's true or false, and they had to push it. The thing with General Flynn was the conversations that he had with Russia when he was coming in as National Security Advisor, all of those things were above board. People thought that General Flynn, who now resigned, people thought, oh, he's having these conversations. He had them with many countries. And I've mentioned this before, but the media, for 2 weeks, the scandal was somehow there's all types of connections that Trump and his people had, illegal things. And I thought to myself, just yesterday and the day before, I said, I think Russia and Putin were hoping to maybe actually work with the United States once again. Like Trump said in the news conference, Hillary Clinton wanted to do the reset. But the media has created an atmosphere, and I thought of this just yesterday. The media has created an atmosphere where I think Putin is now realizing that he cannot work with the American president because they've created an atmosphere that if Trump did anything that would be positive to rebuild a relationship with Russia, it would be impossible for Trump now to do this. Now, we have sanctions that are on Russia that are trying to put Russia into, quote, a depression. And John, why do we have those sanctions? It's a political thing that happened under President Obama. And there are people like McCain and others who actually view anything about Russia as they're the sleeping bear that's going to come get us. Now, they might really do something. And when I read that story yesterday, that Russia has a ship that you could see from Connecticut, a Russian intelligence gathering, but it's got capabilities. It's 30 miles off Connecticut. Okay, they got one there, showing some force, and there were two other actions that Russia just did in the last maybe 10 days. And it made me think, maybe Russia is still on the footing that they realize they can't work with Trump. Not because Trump wouldn't work with them, but because the media scandal that is fabricated has created an atmosphere in the United States now where a U.S. President Trump would not be able to do anything with them. I think Russia wants the sanctions to go away. You say, well, then those who know about all these issues, then Russia needs to give Crimea back, which is a part of the former Ukraine. And I keep hearing people say how he illegally took Crimea. The people of Crimea, who used to be a part of Russia, who spoke Russian, when the Soviet Union broke up, over a period of time, those people wanted to go back to Russia. But they were actually like a part of Ukraine. And the whole history of the Ukrainian independence, but they had, through a certain election and how they put another person in, some of that was actually illegal. But the U.S. still backed the leader of Ukraine, even though there were things that were done that were actually not democracy at all. But we, and John Kerry and all, we kept saying, no, we got to defend Ukraine, their position. And then you had people in Ukraine, this is where the whole little civil war on the Ukrainian-Russian border takes place. You had some Russians living in a part of Ukraine that also were abused. And they were abused by some of the military from Ukraine. Okay, so, yes, Russia, Putin, is backing up those Russians living in Ukraine, defending them against also some atrocities by the Ukrainians themselves, military. Okay, that's why we have sanctions on them. Sanctions that says, we're going to cripple your entire economy unless you do, Russia, what the U.S. wants. That happened under Obama. I remember in an Obama news conference once, he made fun of it. I thought he shouldn't speak so lightly about it. He said something like, mocking that we're going to get him. All right. Russia, I believe, is a real danger. But I found it interesting in the Trump news conference. Look, nobody's going to speak as openly as Trump. And obviously he says things in the news conference, Trump hit on that. Trump said, I think Russia right now in the last 7 or 8 days has done 3 acts that look like they're aggressive. And I don't believe any of those acts are bluffs. But Trump said, I think Putin might be doing some of these things because he realizes that the frenzy in the U.S. media that is centered on Russia, which is really fake, and somehow there was this illegal activity and all the campaign, and because the questions, even in the news conference, centered on that. So I think maybe my post on Russia and World War III, maybe it's more possible than a 50% chance. And you say, but John, no nation would do something. So if another country, through sanctions, had the ability to send our country into a depression, and and the country that was trying to put us into a depression were also guilty of the same things that we were supposedly guilty of, and then they had military actions right on our border, we would consider that a threat. We actually have military strategies that says any disruption of oil, this is an old one we've had for years, we used to say any disruption of oil flow through the Persian Gulf, we would consider it a threat, a defense, a threat to our sovereignty. Meaning basically, if there's anything that goes on that would affect our economy, we would consider that also a threat, which if it affected our economy too much, a foreign country, whether it was Iran trying to block oil trade. So what I'm trying to say is countries, including our own, believe that if another country takes an action that is going to economically cripple us, we ourselves, the U.S., believe it could call for military action. We have made decisions against Russia that are actually doing that, meaning crippling their economy, because we have those sanctions on them based on what I just mentioned. What happened in Crimea, John Kerry condemned. Do you know, I believe it was 90% of the people that lived in Crimea, they had a vote. They had a referendum. And they all wanted to go back to Russia, to join Russia, which they did. We in the U.S., our government still considers that an illegal act, though they voted, and it was an honest vote. But because it wasn't politically advantageous to the United States, we consider that illegal act. Because Russia is doing things in Ukraine, defending some actual Russians living in Ukraine that are fighting against the government of Ukraine that's also oppressed them. That's the other view. I even saw that on PBS News about 6 months ago. But yet, these issues, and Putin himself has said over time, he said, you're a hypocrites, U.S., because you condemn involvement that we have, Russia, that's taken place right on our borders, but yet you involve yourself in other parts of the world for political reasons. And I just wanted to make this note. The other thing that came up at the end, it was a long news conference, and I'm not agreeing with the way Trump said everything, but I found it also interesting, a black reporter questioned Trump, and he said it was one of the nicest questions he got at the conference. Questions weren't that hard, that bad, but she asked, how are you going to help the inner cities, Mr. Trump? He said, thank you, that's a very good question. And she asked him, would you be willing to meet with the Congressional Black Caucus in Congress? And you know, Trump was honest. He said, you know, I was going to have a meeting with Elijah Cummings, who's a black Democrat. And Elijah Cummings and Trump were going to meet because Elijah Cummings wanted to see for his constituents, can we do something, Mr. Trump? And do you know, that meeting was set up for Trump to speak to anybody in Congress that's a Democrat that's black, or those in the Congressional Black Caucus. And then Cummings himself had to cancel the meeting. And he told Trump, now Trump spilled the beans in the news conference on this, and I'm sure it was true. But Cummings basically had to tell Donald Trump, no, my own Democrats are telling me I can't do the meeting because it's better for the liberal Democrats that were going to, maybe Cummings would have a meeting with Trump. It's better for them, instead of to work on solving the problem in some of the inner cities, which does indeed involve minorities, it's better for the Democrats, for a political position, for Cummings not to meet with Trump. So he couldn't have the meeting. Now, Trump's talking honestly. And he's speaking honestly things that normally you wouldn't say in a press conference. But what you're seeing is not somebody perfect, and I'm not a Trump defender. But I just wanted to make that one note because I felt the whole media frenzy that's basically saying Trump and his people had all types of illegal contacts with Russia. And that I felt like it poisoned the water. The actual real world effect was it poisoned the water. And I was thinking to myself, I bet Putin's saying, I'm never going to really be able to work with the U.S. And it's not just a joke. We're trying to cripple their economy with sanctions. And it's real questionable whether or not we should have slapped sanctions on them like we did. It's real questionable that Obama moved forward and put 4,000 troops, I think it was, but it's on what, Poland, but one of the former NATO, one of the former Soviet Union states right on the Russian border. And all of that is considered real stuff going on in the world. And you know, as I looked at the media the last few weeks, I thought, you're poisoning the water. You have national news day and night saying, look, the evil Putin government. I'll tell you, I don't think he's bluffing. And I don't think this vessel that got 30 miles off the coast of Connecticut right now, I think none of those are bluffs. I really think Trump got it right. And this is just one example of our media in the country. I do indeed believe much of it is fake news. And the reporters in this conference were saying, let me tell you, there are things that they put in a way, front page stories on particular things that later actually all found out to have not been true. I even heard one of the liberal news people, I think it was on CNN, and they were saying Flynn and Trump, they had constant contact with Russians. And even one of the liberal ones said, well, actually, that's not true. That's not true. And so the media frenzy that they have created could indeed have effects. Look, Trump even made a statement that he shouldn't have said it, but he said something like, not that he was going to shoot that Russian vessel off of Connecticut. He said, but something like, and if I shot it or something, look, I know that language is not good and I'm not defending it. But because he does speak off the cuff, that could be a problem. But I wanted you to see what the media does is they do things just as dangerous. They do it in a way that the public doesn't realize they're being manipulated. And so the true story about the first few weeks of Trump, he's tried to get things through. He's tried to work on things. And it depends what the media focuses on. They focused on them. Did you know that President Obama, at one point in his term, 8 years he was in office, at one point he did a ban from all refugees coming in from Iraq. At one point. Now, it was not a big thing, and it was for a particular reason, obviously, and it made hardly no coverage. But it was instability, and I believe it was Iraq, but it was a 6-month ban. It was not referred to as a Muslim ban. And it was done for national security reasons. You say, John, why did no Republicans say anything? They were for it. They felt it was okay at that time. But why didn't the Democrats, why didn't Chuck Schumer have one of the women with one of the children that were affected by that 6-month temporary ban of all immigration coming in from Iraq. I believe it was Iraq. Why wasn't there there was nothing about it. Chuck Schumer didn't go find some woman in Iraq that maybe really needed to come. And she had a child, and have her and that child crying, Schumer himself crying. I don't know. I think they're all hypocrites. I don't think they really care. I prayed for Obama for 8 years consistently. Every single Monday, every single Friday, which was my prayer times, still is, for particular intercession for nations and world leaders. So I'm sure I prayed for President Obama, actually, by setting aside that Monday morning and then that Friday. I was up at 5 o'clock this morning. It's on an intercession day in that for world leaders. So I said, and I lift up President Obama and I pray for his family and for his kids. So 8 years did that, twice a week, by name, consistently. Not, oh yeah, I pray for the president. I wonder how many times Schumer prayed for Obama and actually set aside time to do that. I wonder how many times all of these talking heads that are so, my mom asked me something the other day, and somehow it came up, and my money to come on this trip, I depleted my bank account because I don't have that much. And I just I'm going to overdraft for the first time in, a very long time. So my bank account gets overdrafted. I get a retirement check once a month, so I'll pay a fine. But somehow I was talking to my mom, and I said, I've managed to put away $60 a month. I'm trying to save $60 a month, just so I could have a little money, like a few hundred, okay? And then I had maybe about a little less than 300 saved. And that was not enough to buy the ticket. I depleted my bank account for the ticket, but that was spending money because I would need some cash. But somehow, as we were talking, I said, well, I try to save $60 a month. But whatever I save, I was telling her, this is how the discussion came up, I said, I give. So if I'm going to save the 60, just in my little drawer at the house, when I go to the bank account, or my bank, Wells Fargo, I said, give me 35 $1 bills. I was explaining. I said, because I want to give away those $1 a day. I gave one to some guy the other day, actually, when I was with Rick. Some guy was sitting on the bench. I said, I give one a day, because he asked for some. And then I send the 25 a month to Sweet Catherine, who's a black girl living in Africa. And so I just was talking to my mom. I said, so that way, the 35 giveaway dollars and the 25 to Catherine, a black girl in Africa, I give Children International, that comes to 60. So, and I'm not saying, oh, what a great thing. I just wonder, all of these people spending all of this time, I'm sure some of them do good things and all, but they've created a frenzy. They have. They've created a frenzy. Trump was going to meet with Elijah Cummings, okay? A black liberal Democrat. And Elijah Cummings wanted to meet with Trump. He wanted to, and said, let's actually see if we can work on some of the inner city issues dealing with not only blacks, but impoverished people. Let's do it. And they were setting up a meeting, and then Cummings told Trump. Now, Trump spilled the beans. Cummings told Trump, no, my fellow Democrats are against it. They're against it because we're trying to paint you, Mr. Trump, as a criminal right now. Now that didn't come up, but that's the caricature that they're giving right now. So I wanted to make those few little comments. I don't think the Russia thing is a joke, and I think the fact that the last few days Russia has done some things to say, no, we are going to be aggressive towards you, is because we've been trying to collapse their economy for a few years now, and we are doing it. And it's all over an issue that's highly questionable. 90% of the people in Crimea, a former part of Ukraine, voted to go back to Russia. And we consider that, and plus their involvement in Ukraine right now, as we're going to sanction you, we're going to cripple you. We involve ourselves in many countries for political reasons. And I think the media is, as I thought about it, I said, I think the media is putting Putin in a position himself, because this whole Russian thing is fabricated. It's fake. There are many people, even my mom, who likes to watch the news, at one point in the last few days here, she said, can you believe that General Flynn was having contacts with Russia? Can you believe it? And many in the media made it sound like they were doing, it was perfectly legal. And it wasn't just Russia. But they've spun it. They have a lot of people in this country are believing that story, or believing it. So I wanted, this would just be the comment on, this would be just I'll title it something like comment on Trump news conference. Look, he said things I would have never said in that conference. And that's a problem, and I'm not defending that. But he spoke honestly. He spoke openly. And it just shows you how we are so manipulated in this country. Okay? I just made those few little comments. I shared that little thing about the Catherine thing, because it came up, the little girl in Africa. And I don't know if the media even does any real service, the so-called media. I don't know if they do any real service anymore in this country. Hopefully you see the old block. I'll have another little video to write on right now. Pretty soon you'll see New York City. It is cold. Today it's cold. So it would be hard for me to walk the city today, because I get on the bus and I walk through New York. So I'm going to hope for not to be as cold as it is. All right, that's it. Sorry, I vented.